Hello friends. I again am makeup free. Someday you'll see me with it on and you will not be able to recognize me. But I do love au naturel. I'm here today to speak to you about narcissism and what it is and how you can avoid its negative influence on your life. Now, first of all, if you take a look at yourself first and foremost, you can find out what your vulnerable points are. Where are you vulnerable? Where are you easily taken advantage of? And it's to tell you simply this, that your good nature will be taken for granted by these people. Now, the really quick and easy way of finding out whether or not somebody is a pathologically narcissist is to tell them no or not be available, and they will ghost you. But let's not get into those little tiny nitty-gritties. What I'm going to invite you to do is grab a beverage of your choice. Now, this just so happens to be, right now, I'm going to have a beer. I do not advocate drinking in excess and drinking every day. But today I feel like having a beer. So I'm having one. Have a cup of cuppa, have some tea, some water. My background is that I'm a child of a narcissistic mother. I didn't realize why my childhood was so difficult or why things were the way they were. But after having had 2 marriages to narcissists of varying kinds, first a lesser narcissist, then an overt narcissist, and lastly the covert narcissist, I can thank God I never had an ultra narcissist. Otherwise, it could have been crushed. Or he would have met his match, but then again, it would have been crushed. Because until you know what one is, your good nature, your empathy, your kindness, your willingness to do things for others will be, again, taken advantage of. And you will do them gladly. You'll be a willing victim. Because for some magical reason, they're pulling on the very heartstrings that in a world in which all people were empaths and empathetic and kind and compassionate and not out for numero uno, they would be valued. But instead, the naivete of the good person is definitely exploited. So let's just get down to the basics, shall we? What does a narcissist need? Again, this is a pathological narcissist, and I'm going to emphasize pathological, pathos and the logic. There's something not right in the way they reason and the way they see the world. I'm not going to get into the psychology. I'm not a counselor. I do not offer counseling services. There are plenty of those online. I'm doing this as a service to humanity to help perhaps somebody avoid the very real and potentially dangerous world of the pathological narcissist. The pathos. It's this simple. They need one thing in the form of 4. It's like they need your full 100% undivided attention, your undying attention. And in fact, they would rather have you die than leave them. All right, let's get to it. They need control, fuel, character traits, or residual benefits. So in the case I'm going to talk about right now, this would be the narc male. So they have an inner void that can never be filled. I have a joy of being. I have within myself a sense of being, of buoyancy, of levity, of connection to the divine. I have an understanding of myself as a child of the Mother, Father, God. I'm outside of religion, but what I feel, I'm sure, is found in all of them. But instead, I choose not to be within a religion because I found God outside of religion. I found God within myself. The connection, that is, and the connection to a higher power that comes through us and to us through nature, through connectivity to another human being of the divine spark, that there is God within us does not make us into blasphemy. It's not blasphemous to say, I am God spark. I am not God, but I am part of God. So I became aware of this as a young child, and it never left me. And it became ever growing and ever present, quiet at times when I was in times of trouble, but it was always there. And it was the only thing that kept me from self-destructing. The faith I have in my belief that I'm connected to the divinity of God, of this beautiful love, joy, and bliss of which I am part of. That time is a construct, but it is endless. And we are here on this body, this earth plane, for however long we need to learn our divinity so that we can go back home, wherever that may be. And we will get into metaphysics. We'll get into what happens after you die, which I'm not sure of, but I have a really good idea. And we'll talk about near-death experiences, which I haven't had the experiences of, but I have felt them. I am not going to I don't want to get too far off track, but I'm a very devoutly spiritual person, and I have hitched my wagon to a star, to coin E.E. Cummings, I believe, to say that I have always had faith that something will happen in life that will allow the goodness of my being to be exalted rather than exploited. And now it's becoming exalted because I have mastered narcissistic abuse and have come away from it intact in mind, body, and spirit. Albeit a lot more broke. Oh boy. Whew. So let's get back to it, shall we? What does a narcissist need from you? Mainly fuel. They need your energy. They have that inner void that can never be filled. You can drink from the well. You can receive love and sustenance and nurturance from feeling love from the universe, from your God. He can't. It can't. So therefore, they must always they must assert control at all times. And control takes many forms. And it's the control that they assert. It is to gain more fuel, because the fuel sustains them. So when they feel invalidated, they are going to find a way to create a feeling of invalidation in you. Now let's talk about cheating. Cheating from a narcissist is actually not an insult to you, even though it's demeaning, it's horrific, it's a blow to your sense of self. It creates deep feelings of insecurity, shame. Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Why? Well, rest assured, my dear, the reason why the narc has affairs, which are hardly that, they find basically a willing victim who's love-starved to F-U-C-K, is because you make them feel so afraid because they feel attached to you that they want to get one over on you. And therefore, they will prove to themselves that no matter what, I can do what I want. I can go fuck the neighbor. And fucking the neighbor is what they do, especially only if she's single and vulnerable, because that's what narcissists do best. They're predatory. They're predatorial. They're sexual predators. But they act so innocent. And you know what they say to that neighbor? I know for a fact, because the neighbor who my ex cheated on with actually gave me details. And she explained things. And she told me what he said about me. And you know what? It was the very same thing that my ex told me about his wife, the mother of his 3 children. And it was this: I have to beg for it. And what he had to beg for? The homo, anal. I don't do anal. So, response of others, the fuel is going to be he is getting sex from the neighbor and he's got one over on me. He's not telling me about it. He's telling the neighbor she's not putting out. The neighbor is like, oh, geez, you know, you seem like such a good guy. So, when there's a threat to that narc's control, okay? When I was living with him and told him that life was miserable with him and that I needed to find a way out, I needed to move out, I needed to get airspace, that feeling, that threat of feeling unimportant is what makes him do what he does. I'm not going to go into the other things that they do. I'm just talking about the subtleties. There's so many things that I'm not feeling very much like getting my heart rate up, talking to you about the way they do endless loop arguments over nothing, the way they pick at you and create arguments when you're having a great day just to get a rise out of you. That's when you want to do what's called the gray rock method. But a gray rock method isn't a coping mechanism that you use for staying within a narcissistically abusive relationship. The gray rock method is simply becoming gray and a rock. They won't be able to read your emotions, and you sit there like you're a rock. I wish I had more humor back then. I didn't. When you're in the war of living under the roof with a narcissist, and it's incessant, and you don't get any respite. You don't get any like, please, I just need time out. I went to the ocean to get a timeout. I drove all the way to Virginia Beach. I got a hotel room. Didn't answer my phone. Took myself out to dinner at Terrapin in Virginia Beach. And the narc drove the 3 hours from wherever. Of course, the hotel's not going to tell him where I'm at. And drove all the way back. And then when I returned, It was in the days before I was leaving. So basically, I started taking care of myself. I was living with the man. From day one, it was hell. And so I started going, what can I do to get out of this situation that's going to kill me? But I was already in $20,000 I had loaned him. And he didn't bat an eyelash when I gave him $20,000 in the form of paying, this is a rough estimate, when I paid off $15,000 for one of his credit card debts and $5,000 for a second credit card debt. And I remember when I was doing it, I was in a state, like a hypnotic state. It was during the love bombing stage. The love bombing stage is really important to know about. It's when you meet the narcissist and you probably are like me, love-starved, or you came from an abusive relationship that was probably narcissistic, but you didn't recognize what it is, but you didn't know what it was. You didn't know these creatures existed. The consciousness on our planet has actually risen in spite of all the things that we see today. We see a great deal of mayhem and distraction, and I beg you, do not be afraid. This is just more of the same. We've all been reincarnated. We're going to be reincarnated possibly again, or we'll escape the reincarnation wheel of hell, but that we'll talk about that another time. What's important right now is to recognize you are a child. You're a golden child of the planet Mother, Father, God. And as much as people say, oh, the earth, it wouldn't care. We could all die and it would be fine. Oh no, au contraire. The earth is here for us. We can make heaven on earth. We can get back to the garden, as Joni Mitchell has sung. Please, ye of little faith, continue with your fear-mongering. But those of us of the faithful, those of us that recognize our place here, know this is a spiritual battle, and it can be won. And it's one person at a time. And together, we will create heaven on earth. But it begins with you, it begins with me, it begins with us collectively creating wellness in our hearts and minds to know exactly what this infection is, this narcissistic infection. So if you take even a look at world leaders, what do they need? Control, fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. Fuel is that when the masses get upset and protest, other than the righteous ones, there are certain righteous ones. There are others that are a waste of time. They're spinning wheels. I won't go into that. I see how people are manipulated. I see how their emotions are yanked. The well-meaning people, I see what happens to them. Do you think they care? The world leaders that are these narcissistic abusers, they're getting energy from it. So when you know that, you can choose to protest differently. And the way you protest is to have a really good life. So let me just take a look here. Oh gosh. There's so much. I just took loose notes. I'm taking a look at the time that I have in this video. All right, let's talk about types of control. This is types of control of the individual narcissist. This isn't the world leader. All right. All right. So a narc asserts control directly, indirectly, or through withdrawal. Directly, they may create a conflict. Indirectly, they create control by telling neighbors that you're an awful person. And then they create what's called a flying monkey. And then the flying monkey does their bidding. So for instance, Michelle, this awful, awful neighbor, that started off liking me and then did not like me because she was reeled in by her own need to be a buddy with the masculine, turned on me. Michelle spelled her name like that. And what she did was become my partner, his confidant. And he filled her head with misinformation about me. And then she turned on me. So, when you are the victim, the very real victim of narcissistic abuse, until you master your emotions, until you master yourself, until you create self-discipline, you will appear the crazy one. They're sick, these narcs. They say things about you that aren't true, and then the flying monkey will see you acting out. And their beliefs about you, infilled by the narc, will be validated. So, if you are living with one and you haven't gotten away yet, you've got to exercise self-discipline. It's hard. Do not drink alcohol. Do not do drugs. Meditate, run, walk, pray to God, to Goddess, to whomever other than the devil, because you're living with one. Because that smear campaign, and that's what it's called, is defamation of character. And if I had had legal recourse and I hadn't been broken down in heart, if I hadn't had my adrenal fatigue, if I hadn't been spent by my sensory system, they are nerve-wracking. They destroy your ability to think straight. And this happens to children usually of narcissistic parents. And then we become the victims of yet another one. It's despicable. But once you get your shit together, your self-worth, your happiness, your innate ability to be happy, and tell people, tell somebody, let people know. And you know what? He who laughs last laughs the most, and it will be you. So withdrawal takes the form of silent treatment or ghosting. If you're not living with them, they just won't call you, text you after you're being inundated. They won't even bother. The worst thing any victim of narcissistic abuse would do is to say, oh, honey, what's wrong? Please, 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 let me know during the silent treatment or the cold shoulder. Let's work this out. They have now asserted control. And now they know that you are under their thumb. The ghosting, the withdrawal, they're murdering you without feeling, essentially, and it will hurt you. You know what hurts, though? This fact. You are responsible for the fantasy you had about who you thought they were and are to you. You are responsible for how you projected your wishes, wants, and desires on to them. Now, for me, that was a tough one to admit. But admit I did. So, I suggest warming up to the cold shoulder if you're still living with them. Make your exit strategy. Enjoy the silent treatment. Their silent treatment is your silent treat. You're not getting harassed, are you? All right. So, don't bother getting back into the good graces of the narc under their stipulations, under their, what do you call it? There's a word, but I can't think of it right now. You want to get into the good graces with a narc? You're foolish. They're going to realize that you are easily to manipulate. They're going to be provided with fuel, and you will be depleted. So let me just see. Oh, yeah, this is the last thing I'll say. I want to keep this under 30 minutes because I would like, when I was going through the recognition and the realization that I was living with a narcissist, pathological narcissist, which is different than narcissism, I needed to hear this sort of thing over and over again. I needed to have the voice of reason speaking to me because you lose your mind. You're under so much trauma. You experience what's called trauma amnesia. It's the way the brain protects you from what you're experiencing. So every day you wake up like it's a clean slate, like reincarnation and having the memory sweep. I experience that every single day for 2 years. So let me just tell you this. Ultimately, they don't matter. Get away, okay? Get away. Get through the hurt. Admit you were either addicted or you projected who they were onto you. You don't give yourself a hard time, my dear. Do not give yourself a hard time. Dealing with a narcissist is hard enough. Getting away is hard enough. Okay? Pat yourself on the back. You're listening to this video. You're going to make it. Don't ever tell them that you know what you know, though. That's a mistake. That's the hardest part. Exercise self-discipline. Think of this as martial arts. You have to be a ninja. You have to develop superpowers. They will never admit to it at all. But here's this. You don't have to wait for them to stop sucking for you to have a good life. They don't matter. And in the end, they'll fuck themselves over.